Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very, very special guest for you. I know personally, Dan Deist. Dan is the owner of Top to Bottom Services. Welcome to the
Yep.
show, Dan.
Hey, welcome. I'm glad to be here, Otis. I tell you what, when you and I met initially, and you said you had this, I was excited to be on, because I'm a pod fanatic anyway. So like, you get so much great information on those.
Yeah, I mean, when we met, you shared so much great information to the group. I was like, I have to have Dan on the show, and I'm really happy that we finally are able to do this today.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely. So if you can give the audience, if they haven't heard of Top to Bottom Services, just a general overview of what is the business.
Yeah. Top to Bottom Services was started in 2004, and I'm sure we'll go into the conception of it as we're going through this podcast. But it started in 2004, and the name of the company was Top to Bottom and is Top to Bottom Services, and it was really catering to anything that dealt with a real estate transaction, residential or commercial. So, meaning like if someone needed a trash out from a listing, we would do it. If the toilets were cracked and they needed to be replaced, we would do it. If they needed a home inspection, we would do it. If it needed mold testing, we would do it. And then we kind of started honing it really down to some more core competencies and got rid of. I mean, we did carpet cleaning, we did all of it. So we kind of just really started shaving that all away and stuck with the core now, which is what Top to Bottom is. It's a full service home inspection and commercial inspection and related services, from mold to asbestos to sewer camera, swimming pools. You know, honestly, the only thing we don't do at a house for inspection wise would be like a dog fence. And I still don't know how I would do it. Maybe I put the collar on my inspectors and have them walk around the yard until they get shocked. I don't know how we would know it's working, but that's probably the only thing we don't do.
Oh, that's great. I can't wait to get into how you started the business, how you got into it. But before that, I want to, the audience to get to know you a little personally. Are you from around the DMV area?
No, I'm a Long Island transplant. I was born in a small town in Pennsylvania, Huntington, Pennsylvania, and my father was in the Navy, and we did shift around. I'm the youngest of four, and we're all D's. So I have my oldest brother, Doug, then I have Daryl, and then I have David, and then there's myself, Dan, and then of course we have my dad and the mom. So we're like all D's. But I moved to Long Island. My dad was a nuclear engineer, and he was hired to come out to the island and work on some GE plants and things like that. So we moved there in like first grade, and I stayed there starting high school. And then he got moved from Long Island to Maryland, in this at the time a small little area called Germantown. If you mention anything to Germantown now it's huge, right?
Yeah.
But when we got there, the trees were still small. And I went to Seneca Valley High School, and graduated. I kind of because of my move from Pennsylvania into New York, I was kind of in the middle of the year, so I was always they started me back on first grade again, so I was always the older kid, in school. So I graduated in '88 from Seneca Valley High School, which realistically I should have graduated in 1987, but here nor there. Makes no difference. At the time, I thought it was cool because I was able to drive first and drink first. So, and so I've been in Maryland now. So we came out in '86, and I've been in Maryland now for that long. So now I say to my wife, I said, I'm officially a Marylander, because once you're, I'm 54 now. It's like once you get over that halfway point, you can't keep saying you're from New York anymore or some other states. Like, come on, you live there long enough.
Yeah. No, I agree. So childhood for you was really in Long Island.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was great. I love Long Island. It was great. We'd ride my bicycle to Sunken Meadow Park. And we'd go to Smithtown. Billy Joel's from Huntington. The great singer.
Hmm.
And yeah, we would be able to ride our bicycles to the beach and stuff. And it was a great childhood. We had a nice yard out there, and it was the classic neighborhood. There was a square block. Around here, the roads are all, you live on Nearwinder or something that does all this, but in New York, it's square, square, square. And I just remembered whenever my father needed to have a conversation, we would say he needs to go for a walk around the block. So if we had done something that we shouldn't have done, he would come home and said, "Dan, we're going for a walk around the block," and I knew exactly what that meant, and I knew how long it would take me to go around. So, but great guy. He passed away 3 years ago, May. But so he was a big loss to the family, but still solid group.
Sure. What were you into growing up, in Long Island? You mentioned the beach. I don't know if you were into surfing or some other activities or sports.
Yeah, I was in track and field.
Okay.
So I ran short distance and sprints in junior high and going into high school. And then when I came to, I did go to the beach quite a bit, but not the surfing side. But I was really into the bicycling. So we would ride bikes everywhere. In fact, a dear friend of mine, Bruce Saxon, rode across the United States twice on his bicycle, and I would hook up with him and stuff. And that was a lot of fun. And we would customize our bicycles. We would take bike frames, a 10-speed wheel, and put it on a small little frame bicycle. So we'd got a chopper and all that. It was cool. It was a great childhood. But for sports wise, I always did the track and field stuff. Like I did the discus, believe it or not. One thing that I always bring up, I said, one fun fact that's no one would remember or know about me was I did pole vaulting. So
Wow.
it's like, so whenever people call like, "Hey, what's a fun fact that no one would know about you?" And because I speak in these big conventions and stuff, and I'm like, when I bring up the fact I pole vaulted, they're like, "What?" Because you're thinking, I don't even know if the high schools do pole vaulting anymore, quite honestly. So with all the safety measures now, they probably don't even allow it. But it was fun. It was fun.
So speaking about pole vaulting, what's, I guess, the highest you ever cleared?
Well, back then, I mean, if you got into like the 15-foot lines, you're
Okay.
like, rocking it. But like you watch the Olympians now, and they're like, 27 feet, and you're like, you just wonder how they're going up and not coming right back down again. So it was fun, but it was really just I just love the idea of working with people in that team environment.
Sure.
My mom never wanted me to. My brother Daryl was in football and Doug, and they always got quote unquote hurt. So mom, when it came to me, she was like, "There is no way you're playing football." The coaches wanted me because they wanted me either as a tight end or a wide receiver, but she would never let me play. So I was always on the track and field, and I'd see the coaches, trying to talk to the field coach and say, "Can't you get that kid to play?" And if I had to regret, it would be that because I just love team sports.
Yeah, and how was it transition? Because, those years, teenage years, transferring here to high school, are pivotal years. And
Oh,
yeah,
it was brutal, quite honestly. And I thought about that with my two boys now, 25 and 23. It's like when we moved, essentially, you're getting into kindergarten, first grade in New York, middle school, starting high school, getting your first girlfriends, all that stuff, and then leaving because in Long Island it's not huge, so it's the same guys that are on your bus are the same guys at the other school, and then they're same guys at the other. So Dean Jafrida and Mike Dicatano, these guys we all ran together, and so when I came out here going into high school, I didn't have, I
you didn't
didn't
know
have that
anyone,
posse.
right?
Yeah, I didn't have
Yeah.
that group, and I still had a girlfriend in New York, and I would fly from here, much to my parents' discredit. That I would fly from here to Islip on Long Island to see my girlfriend, and my dad would be like, "When are you gonna break up with her?" I'm like, "Come on, you're the one that moved, not me." So it was hard. It was hard. Um, the first day of school at Seneca Valley High School, I met my still to this day, my best friend Dave Gaitis. The bell rang and the halls cleared out, and I'm sitting in there trying to figure this out because this school to me was like a college campus, and
Jeez.
he was from New Hampshire, and he had
Okay.
the same experience. And so the bell rang, and it was everyone's clearing the hallways, and he's at one end, and I'm at this end, and I looked up at him. I'm like, "What are you looking for?" And he's, whatever science or whatever. And he's like, "What are you looking for?" I was like, "Oh, I'm looking for this." And he goes, "Well, that's down this way." And yours, I said, "Yours is over here." He goes, "You want to meet for lunch?" I said, "Sure." And we met in the lunchroom, and that was the very first day of school, and I was the best man in his wedding, and he was the best man in my wedding, and And he has recently, within the last about a year, let me look at the count, a year and a half ago, he donated one of his kidneys to my oldest brother, Doug.
Wow.
So yeah, he's
What a
quite
story.
a man. Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
After graduating from Seneca Valley, what would happen next?
At that point, I was actually working at a hardware store in the Commons in Germantown at a True Value, and I had met my now wife that I just told you I got back from 30-year anniversary. I met her at that hardware store. I was coming out of high school. She's 4 years older than I am, so that's a whole funny story too. If we had time, I'd tell you. But so I got out of that, and at that time I was kind of like did all, I did the hardware store, and I was working with this construction company. Jake Langworthy was just a one-man op guy building decks and stuff like that. And I was like, so it was fun, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I ended up going to Montgomery Community College for an associate's, and I loved art, so I have a degree actually from them in associates in advertising and design. So I was doing that, and then did that, came out of that, and of MC, was getting serious with my now wife, and I was like, man, I gotta find something. And then it just took me down a different path. Like, it didn't take me down the art path or the advertising path. It took me off a completely different path that shaped my life, quite honestly.
What path was that?
Well, there was a woman there that used to shop in the hardware store all the time. Her name was Karen, and she was the HR director for a company called Sentient over in Kensington. And so she saw something in me and said, hey, what's the hardware thing doing, and what are you going to do with this degree? And I was like, I said, I don't really know. She's like, well, I'm this HR rep. When there was still hardware stores, you meet the same people all the time. So it wasn't like my first conversation with Karen, right? And so she said, hey, I'm the HR director of this place. And so I went and did an interview, and they hired me. I was surprised. They hired me at the time. I was like, what? In accounts receivable and shipping. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I had a real job. I had a desk, and I had I remember bringing in a plant, and I was like, wow, I got like this. I'm the real guy. And it worked out really well. And then at that point, my wife and I were getting very serious, and I had asked her to marry me. And I thought I was going in this great trajectory of where I was going to be able to do and support her. And about a year into it, I was laid off. And I mean, I didn't mention that I should go back, but I've been working doing something since elementary school. The viewers can do a search for a paper called the Daily News in New York, and that had to be on doorsteps by 6 in the morning. And I was delivering the Daily News before going to middle school. I would get up on my bicycle and I would go out and I would deliver. And you had the book where I'd go to your house, ring the doorbell, get payment, and so I learned billing and receiving and inventory and all that. So I had been working my whole life, and I worked at the hardware store. I was also doubling down on Burger King and odd jobs and so when I got laid off, I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. I was like, this is not normal. It was like, what? This has never happened to me. And my father said, well, go down and apply for unemployment. And I was like, that made me feel horrible. I'm like, I don't want to get unemployment. But I didn't know any better. So I did. I went, at that time, was in Wooten, and I went and filled out the paperwork in Wooten. And back in that day, you actually had to show up every week, and you had to show them paperwork that you were interviewing for jobs, unlike today.
Yeah.
Now you just like don't even show up. But that's so I would go, and I did it for about 2 weeks, and I said, this is ridiculous. I got to get out of here. So I just pounded the pavement hard and went and found a job that said management training, carpet cleaning. And I'll withhold the company name because they're still in existence, and carpet cleaning management. So I was like, all right, let me go check this out. So I went there and I interviewed with this gentleman named Ken, and got the job. And I was supposed to, you know, become this assistant manager and all that, which I did. So I started working hard. It was hard work, but during that time, I ended up getting married. So I got laid off, stressed out about being able to pay anything. Then got the job at the carpet place, and the I about a year or two into it, I started seeing some conflicts of my personal beliefs and that of the manager, or one of the founders. And for instance, I'm more of, my core beliefs on all my businesses are, you speak the truth, you serve others, and you do what you say you're going to do, right? And I remember numerous times where we had a commission base where they had to do a certain amount of work, and they were able to go home. So I would coach the team up. They would get their commissions. They would call up. I would celebrate with them. Hey, man, you just got a great job. At the time, I think it was like $350 a day they had to generate. And some guys would knock that out in their first job, and they could get home to their family at 1 in the afternoon. It was exciting. I was like, good job, man, pumping them all up. And then Ken would be over here saying, oh, send them over there. There's another job over there. And I'm like, well, that's not what we told them we were going to do. And we told them if they did that, that's what they got, and they got to go home. Mm-hmm. I said, so I've been coaching. So then he raised what I had to coach him to get. So then the volume had to increase. And then when they met that, they kept pushing them. And so then I would get in the car and I would go out and then I would help the team, because I didn't want to tell that guy to go over there when I knew that he wanted to get home. These men and women were working hard. Mm-hmm. And so I put that all on me. And I would go home and I would just be exhausted. I would be getting up at 5 a.m, coming home at 7:30, 8 o'clock as essentially a newlywed. And I was exhausted. And that internal conflict of me going against that servant attitude and do what you say you're going to do. And it was just too much. And I remember having two breakdowns where I just felt so overwhelmed. I just remember coming home one day and just putting my hands, my family, like I said, I'm very tight with my family. So my brother David was there and his wife and some friends were there, and they're all partying. And I obviously came in late because I was always working. And I came in and they were so happy to see me. And I just started crying because I'm like, the thing had already started and there was so much pressure on me. And my brother David said, what's going on? I said, this company, I mean, we're tearing these people up. And we're churning them out. We're not building people up. It's almost like a number. And I was like, it's not how I was wired. That's not what I think God put me on the earth to do. And I was like, this is not right. And he said, and this is where it starts going like this. He says, hey, maybe I can talk to my boss and see if there's anything there. I said, sure. And he did IT stuff, like programming and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's so not where I'm at, but I needed to quit this job. So I went and I met with my mentor. You were on one of our conversations before this. You talked about, do you believe in mentors? And I'm a huge fan of mentors. And I met my mentor, Bob Folks. And at the time, obviously, I didn't know he was going to be a mentor. I just thought he was my brother's boss. So I went in there and he asked me some questions, and he said, well, you can be a gopher. And I don't know if people watching this, actually know what a gopher is, but it stands for go for that, right? So it's like, there was no job for me. Like if my boss needed a cup of coffee, he's like, go get some coffee. I'm like, I'm go for it,
Go get the dry cleaners. Yep.
Yep. So I was a gopher, and within like I want to say in my memory, the trip is really clear. The timeline might be different, but I think it was within the first 2 weeks, if not shorter than the 3 weeks, I got asked to go to a Bridgeport, Connecticut, to People's Bank and be the eyes for my brother, who was the programmer of this system. And just like the people watching right now, what system, what is going on? I didn't even know. I was getting coffee and checking the printer, and I didn't even know what we did. But what ultimately what we were doing, we were providing stock market quotes for people who are buying and selling stocks. They would call these brokerages and they would answer and say, thanks for calling People's Bank. What would you like to quote on? And they would use their touchtone keypad and put in the keys to the whatever, the stock symbol was, IBM, obviously IBM. They would enter that on their keypad, and then they would hear a quote, IBM up this, down this, trading at. And those systems are what the company Audio Response built. And my brother was part of that code side. And we didn't have like go to PC or anything like that. So I was go to PC. I was going to Bridgeport so I could get there. And I didn't even really truly know what we were doing. And at the time, I thought it was the coolest thing. They gave me a pager.
Yep.
So I thought I was the coolest dude, right? So I got this pager, and I fly out to Bridgeport. I land, and I'm so nervous. I don't even at this point. I still didn't really understood what we were doing, and I'm in the cab, no Uber, of course. And the only feature on the pager was obviously inbound notifications and an alarm. So something told me to set my alarm. So I asked the cab driver. I said, "When do you think we'll be there?" And they're like, "Oh, we'll be here in like 35 minutes." So I went on to my alarm and I set it to go off in 45 minutes. And I put it back on my belt, clipped it on my belt. I get to the bank, I opened the door, I knock on the door, receptionist there, and they're like, "Oh, this is great. Dan from Audio Response Services here." And they're talking on the old button thing when they're talking through the thing, and you hear the voice on the other side. "Great, bring them to the boardroom. I'll bring everything in and the schematics." And I'm like, schematics? I'm like, what do I get into? So I go in there, and there's this, just as your viewers would think or listen to, is this bank with this table that's like mahogany, and it's, I could throw a football to the other end of it, and there's leather chairs around, and I walk up and I'm looking and I'm stressing out, and they're rolling out this scroll, if you will, of this schematic of the wiring of this data center. And I'm looking at it going, I don't even know what to say, right? And right then my pager goes off, and they go, "Oh, did you receive a phone call?" I go, "Yeah, I need to make a call." So it got me out of there. And I went in and I said, "Dave, they want me to do this, that, and the other thing." He goes, "Just go in there and drop these words." He's like, "Tell them it's a frame relay. You got to look at the access device, and you need to know what the D mark is." And I said, "Okay, frame relay, D mark." I'm like remembering those things. So I go back in the room and I say those three things. I go, "Oh yeah, I'll show you." And they crawled everything up. I went in there in that one little room, called him back up, and I got out of that meeting. And I just stood there and I did the hands-on. So he would say, "Enter this." I would enter that, because again, there was no PC thing, right?
Okay.
And so I get done with that trip. I fly back and I meet with Bob about a day or two later, and he goes, "So how's your job hunting going?" And I said, "Sir, with all due respect," I said, "you have me going everywhere and doing all these things, and this gopher and the trip." I said, "I haven't even been able to look for a job." And he goes, "Well, why don't you just work for me?" And I was like, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Sign me up." And I was like overwhelmed, excited, because being obviously I had a mortgage to pay. I stretched myself to get into that first house, with that carpet cleaning job and all that. So I started working for Bob, and then that company got bought by a company called NetVest, which stood for Internet Investing. And that's right when people got on the internet, and they were doing trades on quotes online. So that company bought audio to bring in that technology so they could do both. And then that company got bought by a bank holding company, and which was much larger. And then that company during that whole time, I just kept learning and listening. And anytime I had an opportunity to learn a new skill, build a PC, build printers, travel anywhere, I did anything and everything I possibly could. And I would carry what I would always referred to affectionately to as my Bible, right? And it was not the Bible we're thinking of. It was just a notepad that anything and everything I ever did, I wrote down. Because in operations, you quickly learn that operations, everything should work the same way. That's the whole idea, right? So it's like, if you do it one time, it's repetitive. So if I wrote it down and I would just do it again, and if something changed, I'll be like, "Okay, this is what you normally do, but if you see this change, then you do this," and I would replicate that. And I just kept creating this document, and I just kept excelling and getting higher, higher, and higher and higher up into the company, to the point where when I eventually left, the company had gotten bought again by a Fortune 500 company, and I was working there for years, a company called Fiserv. not Pfizer, the drug company, but it's a publicly traded company. It's a great stock. It's trading at like 137 when I looked yesterday, I think. And I left as vice president and director of operations for Pfizer Securities when I left to start this company. I was it was it was quite a ride,
Wow.
and during that time, Bob went off and he did his thing, but he was still around to mentor me. So yeah, so I went. It was really an interesting ride.
Dan, I'm curious, was your brother also stayed in the company through all these
Yeah,
acquisitions and
he did.
mergers? Okay.
Yeah, he did, and he went off. He went off in one direction. He was always on the software development side,
Hmm.
and I started going through the operations side, and I owe so much to David. I'm internally indebted, and I say it all the time. And he's like, "Ah, don't worry about it. My brother. But the truth of the matter is if he didn't step up and get me into that door, who knows where I would be today.
Yeah.
But he stuck his neck out and got me in there, and I just took the opportunity, and said I'm doing whatever I can, and whenever I got somewhere, I would pull up people like Jim Perlato, who still works for me here. I hired him as a manager at the carpet cleaning company, like whatever 30 years ago, and when I left that carpet one, he knew why I was leaving, and I pulled him on over to audio. And then when I went to NetVest, I pulled him on over there. And it's like I
Ah.
always, I'm not one of these guys that step over people. I go like, well, we can stand right next to both of ourselves and we can both move the rock or whatever. So I'm more of a let's collaboratively do this. And then if I get advancement, it's not because I did it all myself. Someone was helping me. And I would look around, and if someone was there to help, now I'd pull them up and let's go.
So what made you start top to bottom services?
There was right when Charles Schwab in E-Trade really hit the placing stock trades online.
Hmm.
That was like a game changer from the touch tone stuff to when we went to voice recognition. Like the voice recognition you hear right now, we were doing that way back on stocks. And when the web got really involved with, and Schwab was really the pushing one there. When they went online to do all of that with the complementary brokerages, they needed someone to spearhead that, and they asked me, and they asked me to move to Philadelphia, to Market Street up there, right off the train station, and I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do it. So my wife and I went up there, and they were catering to. Obviously, I'd been working for them for over a decade at that time, and they knew me, and they knew that I would be successful in it. But there was something in the back of my mind going, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to move to Philadelphia and leave my family down here, my brothers and my parents and stuff. So I'm kind of a nester. I like to be where everybody is that I know. And so I was sitting in a dentist's office, Dr. Stiles, over in the Kentlands, and I was reading an Entrepreneur magazine, and I'm flipping the pages, and this was in 2003, and it said up and coming industry, home inspections in 2004, and I was like, home inspections, interesting. So I pulled the piece of paper out of the magazine, and it was a company called ITA was the training. They were training you to become a home inspector. I pulled it out, and I secretly started working on a business plan to see if this would work. So I had a friend who was a realtor, and I asked him for data, number of transactions, average household income, all the stuff you'd need to do to put together a business plan. And then I wrote the plan, and I shared it with my father and my eldest brother, Doug, and Dave and my wife. Dave's the realtor friend. And I said, here's a plan. I'm thinking about starting my own business. And they all read it, and they said, man, that looks like it could work. And so my wife is like, so are we not taking that job in Philadelphia? And I'm like, no, I think I'm going to become a home inspector. And I jokingly to say that she just fell over and fainted, because she was used to me. I mean, I flew everywhere, California. I mean, and you say a city in the United States, like a big metropolis area, I was there doing stuff. And I said I was getting tired of it. I didn't want to, my kids were still small. And I was like, I foolishly thought if I started my own business, I'd be home more. So I was like, I'll be home more and I can see the kids more and all this kind of stuff. And my wife is amazing. And her name is Marican. She's Dutch, and beautiful woman, super smart, has a master's degree. And I remember going to her and I said, I want to do this. And she said, and she goes, well, if you're going to do it, I don't want you to tippy toe. You're jumping all the way in, and we're pushing all of our chips. And so I said, okay. So I called my boss, Bill Graffier at the time, and I said, I'm not taking the job. And they couldn't believe I wasn't going to take the job because I mean the compensation back then was, 100 and quarter plus you got 24% of your salary and bonus. So I was like back then in '03, that's a good chunk of change. That's a good amount of money now, And so I did it. I hung up all my suits in my closet, and I went and bought a polo shirt, and I got a guy to make my logo, and I started knocking on doors, and they were just slamming the door in my face, and they're like, "Well, we got an inspector. We got an inspector."
Realtor doors or homeowner
I,
doors or
I was knocking on realtor doors,
got it.
and
Okay.
and because that's how the business plan was. I had to get this
Mm-hmm.
many jobs. I had to get this many people that rent, all that kind of stuff. And they just kept shutting the door on me. And they were like, "Oh, we have our guy." So it goes back to the basic. Oh, by the way, I should say I did go back to school. I jumped through that when I was at BHC and then Fiserv. They had a great tuition reimbursement. So if you got an A in school, at the college school, then they would pay for everything, the class, the books, everything.
Okay.
So I said, I'm going back to school to get that business degree that I've always wanted. So I went back to school. So I was doing night school and being VP at Fiserv and a father and a husband all at the same time, and making Dean's List every semester. So it was great.
Look at
And they
that.
paid for everything. And I got my degree. So I had my degree and then I started my job because what I wanted to do is get that degree. So if my business top to bottom failed and I needed to get back into the market space, not only would I have the work experience and obviously the salary numbers and stuff like that, but I would have that education. I'd had that checkbox, because I was able to go all the way up through because they just knew how hard I was working, right? So I wanted to get all that covered and I did. And unfortunately, the business wasn't coming. It was the doors were shutting, and I was like, what? Why are they not using me? And you just go back to your business 101, and it's when people know you, like you, trust you, then they'll use you. And no one knew me, so they couldn't like me. So if they didn't like me, they're not going to use me, right? So Dave, that realtor friend of mine, who's still a great friend, I'm going to see him in 2 weeks in Kansas City. He's since moved, but he came to me and said, you know what? You should install signs. You should install for sale signs for realtors. And I was like, why? He goes, because it's a low point of entry. Realtors have no loyalty to their sign guy. You go in there, you do a great job. They'll start to know who you are. They're obviously going to like you. You're a likable guy. So they're going to like you. And then once they know you and like you, they'll use you for a home inspection. So I was like, sounds like a great idea. So instead of going knocking on the door saying, I'm a home inspector, I would knock on the door and I'd say, I install signs, and the door would open. And I would come in and I would talk, and all of my invoices and all of my emails, every notification I would send to them, I would say, here's your sign receipt. And by the way, we also do inspections. Here's this, and we also do this, and we also do this. And then they would call up, and just like Dave said, they would call up and they would say, hey, my home inspector didn't show up today. Can you do this? I heard you do home inspections. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And then it just went cool.
Ah,
So that's how, so I had the sign business, and then I had all that carpet stuff going on, because remember I told you I bring everybody with me. So
mm-hmm.
when I started the top to bottom, I told Jim Perlato that I wasn't going to go to take the job, because then if I went there, then he was going to go there. Right. And I'm like, I'm not moving to Philly. And he was like, because he's a Redskins fan. So he was like, or a Commanders fan, I should say. So he was like, he didn't want to move. So I said, I'm not going. And when he said, what are you going to do? I told him, and he said, all right, I'm coming with you. And I go, Jim, with all due respect, I wrote the business plan for one person, and that one person is moi, right? And he's like, oh, that's all right. And I said, no, it's not. I said, if we blow it up and we do really well, you're going to want to be a partner. If we do really bad, you're not going to want anything to do with this. We got to decide right now. And another thing that has always stuck with me is he looked right at me and he said, Dan, you'll figure it out. And I still remember that. And I toast him every holiday party because that keeps me moving every single time. It's like, Dan, you'll figure it out. Dan, you'll figure it out. And so I'm like, all right. So I brought him on board and I said, what do you want to do? Because I'm going to do inspections. He's like, well, I'll do carpet. We did carpet before Fiserv. And I'm like, dude, you're out of shape, man. He's like, we'll figure it out. So we went and bought trucks and got our first ad in the paper and back in the yellow pages and all that. And we just started doing all these things. And then one day we started doing the signs. So I had the carpet, I had the clean outs, I had all that kind of stuff. And I saw that our quality of the carpet was going down a little bit because we were getting spread thin because Jim was handling a lot of the work, but the guys he was trained, they just didn't have that same desire to do a great job. And we have such an amazing reputation still to this day. I looked at Jim. I go, Jim, he's getting older. He's older than I am. He's getting. I think he just turned 60. So back then, and I said to him, I go, you need to become a home inspector. And he's like, why is that? And I said, because you're not going to be able to clean carpets, dude, for the rest of your life. And he's like, oh no, this is what I know. And I said, okay, that's fine. I let that go for about 3 days. And I came upstairs one morning and I looked at then our office manager, and I said, we're no longer doing carpet anymore. And they were like, people in the office like, what? And the phones are ringing. We had job schedules that we're finishing the jobs around the schedule. We're selling the equipment. We're going to tell everybody to go Normandy carpet, and we're done. And the guys that are working right now with us, I'm going to put Jim over. I'm going to make him become a home inspector because that will help him in the long run. And the other guys are we're going to have them go to install signs, and everyone will get a job here. We're just not doing carpet, and we're not doing clean outs. We're laser focusing on our core competencies. And so to this day, when you drive to see our office, it still says carpet cleaning on the top because I was too cheap to buy another sign. But so we just closed it all up and moved on. And now Jim is now going part-time. He's just retiring out and just really comfortable and doing really well. And he always says, Dan, I'm so glad you pulled me over here to do that. And then, the software, the sign business led to a software business. Which is the way we manage our installs. My brother Doug said, hey, back in the day, he goes, hey, how are you managing that? And I was Excel spreadsheets and all this other stuff. He goes, there's got to be a better way. So he started thinking about it. He was interviewing me and interviewing people in the sign department. And we started building this software called Sign Tracker, like tracking your signs. Mm-hmm. So we started using that internally. And then as we were using internally, I thought, man, Doug, we could resell this. This is like, we're building this thing and this is like a standalone. So we started going to trade shows and we would promote the software. And then that got too big because it was under top to bottom. So I had the signs, I had the software, and I had the home inspection all underneath this one umbrella. And the risk assessment attorney is like, Dan, you're rolling the dice here. You got so many things going on. So in 2017, I decided to break the company up and start these other companies. So we moved the software over, we moved the sign stuff. Now the sign stuff we're doing in a good month, we'll do 800 installs in a particular month. Installs, not even removals. And then in the software one, we're in Canada now. We're in Hawaii. We have over 130 companies that are using our software to manage their business. We work with Zillow, we work with Rocket Mortgage, Home Buyers of America are talking to us. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And then amongst all that time, I don't know how we're doing on time, but my life is it seems like there's a lot now I'm talking about it. I thought it was pretty boring, but apparently not. But while all this other stuff was going on, I got approached by a gentleman who had sold the largest Verizon franchise in North America. And he sold it for, at the time, it was something like, $180 million or something. It was ridiculous. And Walt Walden. And so Walt came, he wanted to start, he was like his own little mini French Shark Tank. People would go to talk to him and he would decide what he's going to invest in. And one of the things he wanted to get into was mold remediation. So I had a name in the industry. People were dropping my name to him and stuff like that. He was out of, where was he? I think he was in Pennsylvania or something like that. And they got my name because we've been doing mold testing for a long time. And so he came out and met with me and he said, this is what I want to do. And I want you to run all the franchises for the East Coast. And I said, I'm not interested. I said, I'm having fun with the businesses I have, but I will sit on your board. And I'll sit on your board if you give me 2 franchises for free. So he gave me a Maryland franchise, and I said, well, I got a nephew in Tennessee that I would love to help out. So I got him a franchise in Tennessee, and then I sat on the board, and I said, I will run this franchise, and I'll just give you feedback on what's working and what's not. But I don't want that pressure of all this other kind of stuff. So I ran that for 7 years. We just closed that down just because Marikin's now retired. I'm trying to get a little more simplified in my life. I just closed that down. Actually, it was May. It would have been May going into June last year. After 7 years, I closed that mold company down, and I send my referrals to somebody else to do that stuff. So, but that was really fun. So I got into the mold side. So and then I told you about IGO. When we first got on here, before we started recording, I officiated a wedding in Montana for the president of Inspection Go. And I'm a consultant for him. There's a business coaching division within his company called Community. And he and the other founder, Chad Hett, approached me 5-6 years ago to be the head coach of all these other coaches within there that we help other small businesses grow by training them how to recruit and retain talent, how to maximize revenues from new customers, maximize revenues from existing, like working your database, operational efficiencies, exceeding expectations, and that's been super fun. So it's
and these are home inspection businesses, Dan?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And termite and ancillary companies like radon mitigation companies and stuff like that. Sure. So so I've just been doing a little bit of everything now when I think about it.
You have your hand on a lot of things. So you have the software company, the sign install, inspection, and now coaching, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep. And it's kind of funny because I was just talking to our CPA, Walter Dial, and I said, hey, I've been doing this coaching through top to bottom. I'm thinking about starting another company, just doing the consultant work. And he goes, yeah, that'd probably be a great idea. And that it's a heartfelt idea because my father owned a company called Deist Associates. And I mentioned he had closed it, retired, but that name always resonated. And then now that he's passed, I thought there'd be no better way to just continue that legacy of my father by starting a company. I'm going to cry now. Starting a company with his name in it. So I'm thinking that's what I'm going to end up doing. So I'm going to have another company, and I'm going to do Deist Associates. So,
I love that.
Yep.
That's great. Out of all these companies, I mean, how do you go about allocating your time, Dan? I mean, you have to be efficient. So how do you do that with your team and yourself?
It's been a challenge, and I haven't been great at it. I tend to. I think a lot of people when they're delegating, they're not great delegators. A lot of people delegate based on, hey, I don't want to clean the toilets, so I'll just delegate cleaning the toilets, right? Mm-hmm. But then you never follow up on how they're doing on the cleaning of the toilets. So people typically delegate the things that they don't want to do, right? And then even if they delegate the things that they feel like they're competent in, they don't really follow up a lot, and they don't empower. And that would be similar to myself. So I'm always trying to get better at that. But to answer your question, if you were to look at my calendar every morning, I have time blocking. I'm a big fan of time blocking, and also now with the technology for Zoom, like the software company, we have people in Maryland, people in New York, and the Philippines. So we have a Zoom meeting every morning. Where we get on, we talk about what's going on. Everybody sees each other's faces, and to build the culture in that company where people are so far apart. Monday mornings, we always have to post photos from the weekend. And then each person talks about what they see. So I know what Joya's kids look like who live on the other side of the United States. And I know what's going on with my brother in New York, because I see what he did over the weekend. So to answer your question it's the discipline of empowering the people correctly when you delegate, the following up, And then also letting them know that there's consistency still. Even though I'm running these different businesses, I'm consistently on these calls. So if you need me, I'm going to be on these calls, and I'm always going to be there because what I have found in my own life here is talking to our director of operations, Chris Enders, who is a superior talent. He even finds it challenging sometimes. Like, where's Dan's focus? Is Dan's focus on the software? Is it on the IGO? Is it on the signs, or is it on where? Because the focus to him is most important is is top to bottom because that's where he lives, right?
Yeah.
So if I feed that, then I got James and Doug and Joya wanting to know, well, where's Dan's focus? And then I got this, where's Dan's focus? So as long as you are present and you show up consistently, they know how to get a hold of you. So I do have separate email folders for each company. I have different clock office times for different companies, so they know where I'm at all these different times, and I'm spending a lot of time empowering and coaching up my replacements.
Okay. Out of all these companies, this is just me now. I'm curious, what would you say is out of all the industries you're involved with, the most lucrative?
It is definitely the software in the long play. The short play is
That's what I was thinking
short
too.
play is the home inspections, right? That's immediate revenue, and you basically you hunt, you shoot, you kill, you eat, right? So it's like I got a $500 inspection, whatever. So there and in the home inspection industry, once you get to a certain size, like over that 1 million mark, you have the systems, you have the repetitive people in position, so that you can become more profitable, right? The white water in my business, in the home inspection business, is between that 500 and 750. That's the one where the owner is still very much involved in the day to day. There's not a lot of there's too many people wearing the same hats, right? They're shifting them around, and there's a lot of turbulence, and it's not very profitable. But once you get over that $1 million, then you can start pulling in some pretty good profit, and then you can reinvest and stuff. So right now, if you were looking at all the companies, it would be that one. In the long-term play, it's the software, because once you make it, I mean, look at Waze. How many people use Waze every day to find their way, right? And so when we make our software, we're just doing enhancements to it. But once you get that core, that sign tracker core software built, and you can just plug modules into it, it's just a coin my brother would say it's coin operated, right? So it's like, because now whenever somebody puts a signpost, and you don't have to charge a lot. My brother and I are thinking, we don't have to make it on every person. That's how we do our inspections. I want people to use me for my inspection company and come back. Not, and so it's like, if I gouge them on pricing it, that's not a part of the great experience, right? So in our software, we're only charging $1 per placement. So if you're that guy running that business, or that young lady running that business, and you're paying me $1, it's almost ineligible. I mean, you can hardly feel it. But if you do that with 100, 200, 300 companies around the United States, and they're all doing $500 or $600, a day and a month in installs, the money starts to show up.
So the software company, what it does is you put a placement that you want to sign up for your home that you're selling, and then it tracks the sign. Is that what it is?
Yeah, basically it's even more than that. It's really it's been developed now over the years. It's a complete, I mean, it's got accounting built in, it's got customer retention built in, client retention management system built in, it's got email notifications built in. So it's got your whole inventory, it's got everything all in it. But from an end user's perspective, like the realtor, they use it to log in, place their order. They can say, oh, I want that sign over here. Where are all my signs at now? Oh, I got one on Maple. I got one on Georgia Avenue. And oh, that one needs to be picked up. And they can just quickly click on whatever they want to build or remove. And then on the licensee side, it's building everything from, once Dan Deist has been created as a client in there, the system wakes up and says, oh, Dan still got an order out there. I'll send them an email saying, do you still need this? So there's tons of automation. So my life as a business owner is much easier. And from the realtor's perspective, their pain points have always been, I don't know when it's been installed. I don't know when it's going to be removed. And I don't know how many panels I have. Well, that's all solved. You can track it all the way down to when it came in, when we called Miss Utility to mark the property, to when our guy installed it by photography proof.
When you were building this on the back end, since you're now nationwide or even in Canada, you would have to also build a relationship with local people who would install the signs, right?
That's right. That's right. Yep. And that's where our market drive right now is building the sales force when we're going out, because the branding has been done. You know, the people when they're looking and they're like, okay, the branding's done, sign tracker's there, they know what it is. Now you just got to go out and actually got to do the ground marketing and the sales of it, right? So now we're reaching out to companies like mine. My company is called Real Estate Sign Tracker. That's the one you're physically sticking in, and we call it REST for short. And I didn't come up with it; an employee did. It's REST. He said, call it Real Estate Sign Tracker because we can use REST, and our tag can be, you don't need to install your own signs, you just need REST. Right? I was like, that's cool. Another guy came up with that. It was great. But now what we're doing is we're going to find all these little RESTs all over the United States and Canada, and we're hoping to get into Ireland. We're talking with a guy right now to try to get over there because everyone's selling properties. It's not like we're some kind of monopoly on that. So so we find those people, we show them the benefit on how that saves them time and how all those things are built together. And there's a reason why Zillow and those guys were talking to us, because the technology's there. It's powerful.
So for these local people, local companies installing signs, I guess it's a split share revenue type of thing because you're handing them the business, and then is that how it works? Or
what we ended up doing was we didn't do the franchise model. We did the licensing model. We thought about the franchise model where we would do a rev share, right? Like you were referring to. What we did was licensing, so that they're licensing the right to use our software, just like if you were licensing Microsoft, right, to work on your, like I'm using Microsoft right now, right, in that platform, and we're talking to Zoom, right? So we have a license to use Zoom, right? Well, you have a license to use Sign Tracker, so you can run it. You can run your business any way you want. You only want to install on Tuesdays, fine. We just give you the software. We give you the Microsoft to run the business, and then you just take that anywhere you want, right? So you have your own employees, you have your own shirts, you have everything is your own. You're just using my software, or I should say our software, to run your business. We're your Microsoft.
Interesting. So these local install sign companies are paying you a licensing fee to use your software, and then they have inbound business coming in.
Right.
And then Zillow or Redfin or whoever is also, or local realtor person is also using your software and paying you so they can get their signs installed.
That's right.
Dan, this is beautiful. No wonder you love it.
Yeah.
You're getting money each way.
Yeah, exactly. And the ones that we have, the enterprise, and Doug needs to get a tremendous amount of credit. Doug really, I was there to kind of help out and push some stuff and give him ideas and stuff like that, but he's absolutely brilliant. So now we have these enterprise levels where Zillow will do is Zillow will come in and they'll say, well, we're buying properties all over the place, or Keller Williams, or Rocket Mortgage, right? So they come in onto a portal. It looks like Rocket Mortgage, and they say, I have a install in North Dakota. Well, all they're doing is putting the address in there, and then we behind the scenes are going, oh, we got a guy in North Dakota, and we're just giving the work to North Dakota. Then North Dakota is paying us a $1 to have it, and then we're charging the company to have the portal, right? So we're just like, but it's all small little bits, so it's not a painful swallow for any particular person. And I told Doug, I said, our success for Sign Tracker will be once we can make it for our licensees that it's free to them, right? So it's like, okay, they're paying us $100 a month. It's like $98 for the license, and then $1 per thing. I said, what can we give them that they can run money on to pay for this? So they don't. So it's a no-brainer. So we started having conversations with photography companies, and they're saying, oh, well, we want to take pictures of these houses for sale. We said, okay, well, you pay our licensee to be on their website. We don't care, because we're getting our money when you stick it in the ground, and our license fee. So we just go to our licensees and say, why don't you just charge the mover $35 to be on the landing page, so every realtor that's logging on to your area sees that mover, and you charge him $35. You charge the other guy $45. You're not doing any work. You just pay that to, now we're not getting any of that money, right? But we're giving you a vehicle to make money so that we're really not costing you anything.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is awesome. I'm like, yeah, that's how we both win.
Yeah. Dan, I want to be mindful of your time. Do you have a little bit more
Yeah,
to? Okay.
I had blocked the rest of the day, so because I didn't know if we would be on time or whatever. So whatever you have.
No, I was going to ask you next, out of everything, what drives you and motivates you today?
It's has always been it's actually a detriment as well as a motivator. And I just want to be really honest with everybody. I started the business, like I said, naively thinking I'd spend more time with my family. It did give me opportunities when it was small. I did meet all the obligations of my kids in elementary school. I went to their field trips. I remember the kids in the school used to call me Mr. Cool because I would always show up, and they were like, because I was like one of the only dads that would come to all of it, and I cooked at the football games and all this so I did have that, but success comes a lot of discipline. Success comes additional stresses, and so it was a benefit. What motivated me was being home with my family and building a sustainable income. But like I said, my core belief is to serve others. So then it added stress, right? Because then now I have these new employees, and these employees have husbands and wives and kids, and they want to see their kids grow up, and they want to go on date night with their wives, and I want to provide that. So when they're home, sleeping, thinking about, oh, I got to go to work tomorrow, I'm laying in bed with my eyes open, going, how am I going to make their phone ring? How am I going to feed all these families? At one point, I think we had up to like 54 different, employees with their families. That's exponentially larger than just me and my wife Marika and my two boys, right? So now I'm motivated on how do I help these people? Like we brought in 401k to kind of help our staff to think about retirement and what they're going to do later. So I'm motivated now to just how do I keep serving? I'm a server, and I just remember, and I'm careful about it because my father once said, he goes, Dan, what's going to take you out in life is you're going to be helping somebody else, and you're going to get hurt, meaning physically. It's like, because I'm the guy that stops on the side of the road, changes car tires. It's like if I see someone broken down, that's me, right? I'm towing the people in the snow. I'm the one breaking my back because that's just who I am. And so it's a driver, it's a motivator, yeah, but it's got the potential to be a detriment. You got to be careful. The things that motivate you sometimes, if you're not keeping them in check, they can also be a real detriment.
Sure. No, I can understand that. So basically, it's just a serving of others, like you said, one of your pillars earlier.
Yeah, yeah, it's literally just that. I just believe that if everyone helped everybody just a little bit every day, they would go home feeling fulfilled, and lives would be that much easier. And then this person this guy helped me the other day, fix my tire, and then he's gonna open the door for somebody that's carrying bags, and it's just maybe it's childish of me to think that way, but that's just how I'm wired. So I'm motivated by helping others and seeing people be successful. There's plenty of people here at TTB that make more money than I do, and I don't have any qualms about that. If they work hard and they deserve it, they should be paid.
That is rare. That is
Yeah.
very rare.
Well,
When, yeah,
it's a true statement. I can tell you that. My goal, speak the truth, serve others, and do what you say you're going to do. And everybody wins. I mean,
because
Jim's worked for me one way or another for whatever 30 years.
I see many times if there's someone getting paid high, whether it's a salesperson or whoever, then the CEO, the
Mm-hmm.
CEO, not a lot of, I'm not saying always, but many times has a certain
Yeah,
ego and they squash it.
yep,
They're like, nope, it's not going to
yep.
happen.
And some of my coaching when I'm coaching some of these companies, and I go, guys, when you have a very successful marketing person and she's out there and she's crushing it, and yeah, so she's making 150 or she's making 200, whatever. Well, so are you. You're making money too. You're making it into the company. You're the one that decided to open a company, so you're reinvesting. I get it, but in the long run, it's still yours. If you sell the thing in 5 years, make $5 million, would you not want her to make 250 or whatever if she's helping you build a $5 million company? Come on, all right. So it's that short the short-term expectation of I got to make more than everybody else because I'm the guy at the top of the tower. And I'm like, if we're all making money, I'll make it in the long run. Something will come around. It'll come around in my time. Like, I could sell top to bottom right now for 1.5 million, 2 million. And it's like, okay, so that's good. It's like, so if I'm paying somebody else a good amount of money, I'll make it in the long run. Why do I got to make it now?
Yeah. Then, as you know, with business, not all the times is always a rocket ship heading up. There's ups and downs, and you having multiple companies. Is there any favorite fail or setback that you had to deal with any of your businesses? And if so, what'd you learn from that?
We had a significant one. We're living through a significant one right now, at top to bottom. When COVID hit, everyone was kind of, wow, this is weird, and we don't know what we're going to do. And I've told people it was so easy in my mind to lead during COVID, right? Because you have now this group of individuals that are learning of something new themselves. So this is a completely new experience. And if you were already in a position of authority, they were looking at you saying, well, now we don't know what's going on. I know Dan doesn't know what's going on because this COVID thing is new to everybody, but Dan's got a good core compass. So let's just go that direction. So it's very easy to lead going, I'm going that way. Like, I still remember getting together with the companies. We did a group company, and I go, guys, I've never seen this before, but I do tell you, I know where due north is, and I'm going in that direction. And if you will stick with me, I will get you through this, right? And so it was easy. It was in my mind. It was like, okay, let's do it, because no one knew.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're out of, and we were very busy in COVID because people were buying houses. They weren't going into the offices, so they're buying big. So we had our best record year ever. Then coming out of that last year was like, what happened? The faucet started turning off.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year, the faucet was even tightened more. Why? It was because now people are waiving home inspections. There's less inventory, so there's less opportunity. Well, now it's very difficult to lead. Why is that? Because now we're in a market where people assume that you've seen this already, Dan. You've gotten through '08. This is why you're sitting at that table in that room in there. You're the leader. Figure this out. Whereas before, when it was COVID, it was like, well, I don't know. Do we wear masks? Do we not wear one? Do we wear gloves? I don't know. It's like nobody really knew. So we just went. Now they're like, you're supposed to know your stuff. So let's go. Right. So it's a lot more stress to be a leader in a down market. So what I learned right here was you have to stick with what you have to stick with what you know, and you have to look for opportunities for different sales verticals. So what you have to do is you got to sit and go, what do I have right now in my staff and my resources that I could use that would not add too much to my bottom line operating expense that brings value? So we started looking and say, hey, we got this equipment to test for radon, and we got this equipment to test for lead. How do we maximize that? Because if someone's not buying houses, they don't need to do the lead and the radon, but the people that are already living in Montgomery County and other surrounding counties have to do that for rental properties. Let's focus on that. And let's focus on our lead for the people that have houses over 1978. I already got the equipment. So we just rediscover a new sales vertical and pump it in there. And with little effort and little outlay of cash, we can now introduce two completely new sales verticals that now I can shift talent over. Like today, we have our director of operations, Chris, and Stefan, one of our newer inspectors, taking more lead classes right now so they can do lead swipes and all that. It's a low hanging fruit really for us. Mm-hmm. So what I learned was stick with your core competencies, look for opportunity where you can leverage skill sets you have on staff and tools you already have, and see what you can do with those and build something on that. And I mean, we must have scheduled 8 or 9 just radon tests just this morning. It's low hanging fruit, but you need to have the lights on. You got to have all these different sales verticals, and then the other one with what I've learned is figure out your market share. If you're if you're say you're 14% market share, and your revenue is say $1 million, but your operating expense is going to be at 800, it's all math, right? So you figure out where you got to be, and then you say, well, if I increased my market share by 2%, what's that bottom line number? What's that number mean to me? And once you know what that bottom line number is, then you can say, okay, where do I got to get to that 2 or 3 more percent in market share? Is it in this county, that township? Where is it? And if it's over there, then you say, okay, that's the one I think it needs to be. Now, why do I think it's that? Well, because I got the income of the household is better over there. Which means they have expendable income. The houses are larger. They're going to need more ancillary services. You got to be very specific and very targeted, and just move it small. Don't try to go out and paint your first Mona Lisa. Just go to the store and buy paint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And get the paint and stir it and go like, now I'm going to take this one line. I'm going to build this one thing. I'm going to build. I'm going to build. I'm going to build. And you keep getting feedback. Business. If anyone's listening on here, business is going to boil down to two things, really two categories. It's math and it's people. Math and people. If you know your numbers and you know how to help with people, you'll be successful. If you don't pay attention to your numbers, it's like getting into the car and having no lights on your dash. You don't know what the battery charge is. You don't know if you have flat tires. You don't know how much fuel you have. You have no idea what's going on. You can't do anything without knowing your numbers. It's just a fact. The people, you got to understand how to retain them and recruit them.
Yeah, someone who wants to penetrate that market and increase it 2%, like you mentioned, what are some tactics they can do to go that way?
If it depends on the market space you're trying to get into, you can do it through acquisition, right? So if I wanted to increase, say, in West Virginia to get a market share up there, I could acquire,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm going to go look for someone. There's a lot of acquisitions going on right now. I'm being taunted quite a bit, but hey, you want to sell? You want to sell? So I could buy it, all right? I could rent it, meaning you grow by either purchasing it, renting it, or building it, right? So buying, we just talked about. Renting means this: hey, you do the same services I do in this area. I will help market your area. You support me there, and we'll do a revenue share, right? And when we get to a certain point, we can renegotiate either a buy or I just pull out, right? So it's the same thing with like bringing on a consultant or bringing on contractors or part-time people. You're kind of renting that support, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very popular one with a lot of businesses. They'll bring on virtual assistants to fill a gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is you could build it. You could literally build it. So you could buy it, rent it, or build it. And when you want to build it, that's when you say like, okay, if I'm moving into this new territory, how do I build up that territory? Well, I need route runners. I need people going into offices, smiling, shaking hands, kissing babies, right? And getting I'm building that whole piece back up again.
Mm-hmm.
That is obviously a long-term better play. The short-term gain is acquisition, right? And the medium one is the renting, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
at some point you have to decide, I'm no longer going to rent. It's like, do you keep renting? You'll never get wealthy if you continue to rent, right? So if you continue bringing contractors in, you'll never get to where you really need to be on those 1099. There's not in a lot of businesses. I just want to make sure there are businesses I'm very aware of that like cable running, that's all consultant stuff, cable drops and things like that. But to answer your question, you purchase, you rent it, or you build it.
With those two new verticals you mentioned earlier, how are you going about marketing those new services to the public?
We are actually we're working with a great company from Digital Addicts. They do our online presence.
Okay.
Right. And then so they're the ones the homeowners searching, they're going to find us on there. And then what we're doing is we're hitting the real estate offices, letting them know, going to rental because you have the commercial realtors, you have the residential realtors, and you have the property managers. So we're really going to the property managers because they already have the fish in the bucket. They already have the homeowner that has the property with the tenant that needs to have mold testing, needs to get lead testing, needs to get radon testing. So we're really marketing that way. Say, let's just go, because I can go to one great property manager like Dave, go talk to him that has 125 properties, while I have Digital Addicts looking for that one person to search online that says, I think I have lead. You got to go both, right? You got to have the online and digital, but you also have to have the grassroots kind of guerrilla marketing type of approach on any one of those.
And building that relationship, like you said, with the local property managers.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
You mentioned several times different people in your team. How important is building your team and having the right people and putting them in at the right place with the right role in the buzz, per se?
It's funny because there's great books out there like the five attributes of dysfunctional teams and things. Teams are great, but you just got to really know that the dynamics of the teams change all the time. So let's just say you had a great team of five, right? And you're growing. Well, now when you bring somebody else in, that new dynamic completely change. You can't even say, "Hey, I'm putting you on the team." It's now a new team, right? So now what you got to do is you got to find out, how does that team communicate with the new member? Did that new member change the communication? So teams are extraordinarily important because you have the built-in if one guy's out, the other guy's got it. You got the backup plans. The community thought, right, is great. But when you run teams, you have to make sure that they're functioning teams. You typically want to have somebody that's the lead of the team, the scribe of the team, the guy that like makes sure that we're all doing the right stuff. And then like some of the implementers of the team make sure that she's doing what she's supposed to do. So a one team does have a quarterback, typically does have wide receivers and all these kind of things. It's not all just doing the same exact thing. If they do all the same, if you have the team of developers or team of inspectors, then you just got to worry about culture changes when you influx the team with new players.
Great advice. If someone came to you, doesn't matter what industry, what business, service, a product, software or not software, and they wanted to start a company, new business, what advice would you give them, Dan, as far as some pointers they need to do or look out for?
First, I would ask them, what deficiency do you see in that market right now? If someone came to me and said, I'm going to start a new business, I'm going to say, what is it? And they go, oh, I'm going to open up a sandwich place. So why? What deficiencies do you see right now? And if they say, well, I think people are hungry, that's not going to work. If they came and they said, oh, the deficiencies is that there is no sub place. It's all seafood. There's no sub, and the closest sub person is 3 miles away. And the deficiency too is the stores in the local area don't sell cold cuts. It lets me know that they are looking to solve a problem, not just get in there and say like, hey, I just want to build my own business. So the first thing I would say is, what deficiencies do you see? Right. And then the next thing I would ask them is, what are your unique selling points or propositions? Right. And a lot of people don't know about USPs, but I always say like, hey, if you're opening up, that sub place, as my example, right? And you say, okay, great. What's so unique about your sub place? Well, I make great subs. I'm like, okay, well, let's just imagine in our mind, we have 4 entrepreneurs standing in front of us, and you're one of those 4. And I say, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to make great sandwiches. I'm going to say, who's going to make great sandwiches? They're all going to step forward. Well, I'm going to also work on the weekends. They're all going to step forward, right? It's when do you continue stepping forward because of those unique things and the other people don't. Hey, I'm going to cater late evening Y club members because there's a Y down the street. Well, probably one's going to drop off because there's probably no Y near them, right? So now they can say like, we service the Y, right? Meaning the exercise place, right? And you continue to go forward until where you're never really going to get, in most service industries, you're never going to get 100% unique selling points. There's always going to be someone. But what you got to be able to do is say, well, maybe one company does it Y, right? And then you can beat them with service, right? But you won't be successful if you do the same thing as everybody else. It's like my home inspection company is like, all right, well, what makes you different? And it's like, okay, well, at one time we were offering a 90-day warranty. Well, then everybody started doing it. They were like, well, what's ProTech doing? What's Dan doing? And then so they all did the same thing. So we were constantly trying to figure out, when do we continue to step forward? That's when we said, oh, now we do XRF for lead. That dropped a lot of people off because they couldn't afford to buy the equipment. So we're constantly reinventing ourselves. So to them, I would say, what's your unique and what problem are you solving?
Love that. What would you say is your biggest challenge today?
I would think that right now it's getting it's reestablishing the positive imagery of a home inspection, right? And what I mean by that is we have customers and we have clients. The customers are the buyer, the end all buyer. Our clients are generally, the realtor, right? So you can flip it either way you want. You can say the client is the buyer and the customer is the realtor. I don't care which name you say it's going to be, but the bottom line is the realtor has the opportunity to provide you a lot of business, right? So it's almost like a client to you or a customer to you. And then the buyer is a one-off. The biggest challenge we have right now is that because we have 2 years of waived inspections, both the buying agent and the listing agent haven't had to negotiate a home inspection because there were no home inspections. There was very little home inspections. So, and now we have all of these new realtors coming in board, and they don't know what it is to build a business and negotiate. So now my biggest challenge is going back into the real estate offices and saying, hey, listing agent, here's the benefit of having your homeowner do a home inspection before they sell. Hey, buyer agent, this is the benefit. Remember these benefits, why you wanted this, because you wanted to make sure that you were serving your client well, and you didn't want them to move in and find something 6 years down the road and not use you again. So it's almost like reinventing it ourselves again, to going back out and just doing that. That's our biggest challenge. So I went out and I told the team, I said, guys, we got to go back with this mentality of the only reason someone's not using us is because they don't know we exist. Because you have to have the mentality that we have the best leadership, the best vision, the best culture, the best inspectors, best product, best customer experience. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that idea in your head and you're like, oh, I'm pretty good, we don't mess up that much. It's like you're not really going to be that great, right? So you got to go in and say, the only reason they don't use us is because they don't know we exist. So get out there and start preaching and not keeping us a secret.
Coming to an end here soon, Dan, what do you know now that you wish you would have known at the start of your business career?
That's a really great question. I would probably say if I knew better on how to manage cash flow initially, I think that would be a lot better. I had the ability to forecast and things like that. That never was a real big problem of mine. But I think if I understood better, like what it took on a day-to-day to just operate, to keep the lights on, because a lot of times right now when I'm coaching people, I go, so what's your burn rate? And they're like, for one thing, I don't know what that means, right? So then I was like, okay, it means like, what if you got no business coming in at all and you just needed to keep the lights on? What's that cost? Your overheads and all this kind of stuff. If I had a better understanding of that and really delved into my numbers better, I wish I knew that much earlier, because I did a lot of grunt work and bootstrap pulling and stuff like that.
Yeah. Are there any specific habits you feel that you have or traits that have helped you, whether for business or just on the personal side of things?
I think my personal desire to be liked, quite honestly, is an attribute of mine. I'm a big believer of these self-assessments and tests and stuff like that to see your personalities. And one of mine is, and it can be a downfall too, is you want to be liked, right? So, so I like that because I want to help people. So like that feeds into that, but it can also be a problem when you're trying to manage your team and you're like, are you really going to tell them not to park in front of the office when you told them 5 times you're not supposed to do that? Because I want them to like me. Am I really going to tell them to, no, this is how you're supposed to go through the attic when you're inspecting? Because I really want them to like me, So I think that's one of the benefits I've had is that I'm likable, but it's also a detriment, right? I talked a little bit about that earlier. Some of your motivators can actually be detractors if you let it unchecked. We all love chocolate, but you can get sick if you eat too much chocolate, right? So you got to take a little bit of that. Also, I think one of my driving factors is my faith. I believe that I'm here for a purpose, and I know that believe whatever you want, right? But my belief is I'm here for a reason, and He's put me here to do good, and if I can do that, then I will. So that's a big driving factor, and that dovetails perfectly with the servant attitude. Serving others, is a good one. And then finally, my family. My family is a motivator. I want them to see that if you work hard, and you help other people, you can be successful in whatever you want. If you want to be a great lawn cutting person, cutting grass in the neighborhood, you can do that. This country provides that. If you want to start your own business, know there's pitfalls, know there's challenges, but you can do that. And I'm proof of it. Right. So I went from coming out of high school to eventually going to a Fortune 500 company, now owning 4 companies and doing coaching. I'm no different than anybody else. And I guarantee there's plenty of people that work for me right now, Chris Enders, Matthew, if we went and said, hey, let's go back to college and let's take some of those college placement classes, they're probably going to kick my ass, right? But so there's a lot of people that are smarter than me, but I'm going to work harder than they are. And I want my family to see that they can do it because I did it.
You mentioned family, and I know you have two boys, two sons. Are they involved at all with any of the businesses or no?
They're not. Harrison is on the sign business a little bit. He's in between the college semesters, so he's installing signs a little bit right now.
Okay.
His real calling, quite honestly, is he needs to be like a tree arborist, work at a state park. I mean, he's such an outdoorsman
Okay.
that this would just kill him, right? And my youngest son, Chase, has already graduated from University of Maryland, and now he's in their graduate program for architecture.
Oh, nice.
So neither of them have any desire I tell you one thing, they wouldn't mind the money, but they don't want the job.
Yeah, of course. What does the future look like? What are you most excited for the next couple of years for the businesses?
I'm really excited to see what Sign Tracker Technology, the software. I really want to see what we can do on the enterprise level there. I really do believe that we can move into different countries. Canada was just like a kind of tiptoeing. Then we got the Ireland one as a tiptoe. I just think that that's really excited. I really see the enterprise side going on that one because if we can build the enterprise side, most of those companies already have little mom and pop sign installers they're already using. So they by default would bring them into our fold. So I'm really excited about that. The actual physical install the signs. I'm really excited to see what Kieran Mehta, my manager down there, can do. He started introducing like delivering booties to the house when they install the signs for open houses and bringing bottled water and it's just really creative things that he's doing down there. That's taken it from just a commodity based business to something that's more of a true service one. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see what Chris and the team here at Top to Bottom can do because I'm a little gray and I'm not long in the tooth here. I'm really excited to see them continue to stepping up. And I see us hitting some record years. I see us really becoming a true, not just a home inspection company, but a service industry, like about 50% to 60% of our gross revenue coming from just ancillary businesses, ancillary services. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in that. And we've also, I didn't mention it, we became a school. We're now a home inspection school. So I'm excited to
Wow.
see what TTB can do because I think that we do great inspections and we have the curriculum and I think we can I love the industry. So I'm excited about the school. I'm excited about what they can do as leadership here. And then when it comes to the coaching, I'm really excited to see how many $1 million companies I could be linked to as helping. Right now, the group that I coach, there's 20 companies in there, and I think all of them. I think there's one like 900. They're almost all over a million. One's 14 million. A lot bigger than I am. And I've said, you can be a great coach. Tiger Woods' coach can't beat him in golf, but he can tell him how to swing, right?
Hmm.
I feel the same way. I have no desire to build a $14 million company right now. I hope they do. I hope Matthew and Chris do, my ops guys, but I don't. So that's really where what I'm really excited to see in the future is what they can do.
Now that you mentioned this, Dan, if there's a home inspection company, let's say making $1 million top line, what's a healthy margin that you see the owner, even though I'm sure part of it's going to be reinvested in the company, that
Yeah.
they can take home?
Yeah, great question. There is something in there that I actually kind of put together through one of my coach, Ed Robinson, from Vistage, and he taught me a long time ago about something called the Rule of 20, and that came out of the termite industry, where they said the discipline was you take your whatever profitability you have, say it's 10%, then your growth should be 10% in the termite industry, they equal 20, right? In our industry, with the data I've been following and all the companies I have access to, 100 and some of these companies that do this stuff, ours is a rule of 40 at those numbers. So meaning that if you wanted to grow, say I'm all in on growth and you were growing at 20%, which is a good clip, in our industry, a 20% profit margin is very doable. There's 20 and 20,
Mhm.
profit growth equal 40, the rule of 40. So right now we're getting hammered. My role of 40, quite honestly, is probably down 9. right? Because there's not, I'm sustaining a little bit of growth, but I'm only pulling in like 1% profit right now because built like a prize fighter and my phones aren't ringing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I got it. That's why you were saying before, like what I challenge right now, I got to get out to the selling agents, buyers agents. But normally under normal circumstances, pulling in at 20% is not a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So person's bringing in their salary and then they're bringing in about 200,000 if they're running a $1 million company. So a home inspector that's got, and that you normally at that size, you have 8 full-time inspectors. You generally have 2 marketing people. You have a backup call center, and then you have like an office coordinator.
Yeah.
That's the formula. 6 plus 2B plus 1.
I like that. Dan, I feel like I could talk with you forever about business, but I want to wrap it up. So when you're not busy with all the business, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
I like to drink wine. I enjoy Chardonnay now. I've shifted from red to Chardonnay. I love, quite honestly, just being present with my kids. I just love watching them even from afar. I just like to be in their presence. And I really adore my best friend, who is my wife. And I could literally sit in a room with her and I would be quite content.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yep. It's the truth. So I am so fortunate beyond words.
Dan, if people want to learn more about you and all the different businesses, where can they go and get more information, please?
TTB for top to bottom, and then the word services, and that's plural, .com for the home inspection side, and then signtracker.com, and tracker is spelled without a C, so it's sign TRAKER, intentionally no C, for the software side. But and then of course you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook, and follow me on Facebook because I've been doing a new thing on every Tuesday called the Neck Up Checkup. I'm thinking about it, I'm talking about it. And I just do short little, as I'm walking into the office, like the other day, I did one and it was about character and reputation. And it's just short little things. I said, God, the problem is a lot of people allow their reputation to be created by others. Someone's late all the time. Don't call Otto. He's always late.
Yeah.
And someone else is building that reputation. I said you should build your own reputation, and it's through solid character. It's what you're doing when people aren't looking. Well, how are you helping people? Are you getting up? Are you doing that extra step? That's your character. People will see that character, and that builds your reputation. Don't let anyone else ever, ever, ever control your own reputation. So I do little things like that, just short little. I'm thinking about it. Like I did one with my wife. I'm thinking about this. How do you, people say, how do you have a great marriage? I said, date your wife and flirt with her. If you date your husband and flirt with your husband or your boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, if you don't, someone else will. So I constantly date and I constantly flirt.
I like that. And this is on Facebook, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So you can find me on the at Top to Bottom's Facebook page, Top to Bottom Services, Facebook, and you're going to follow me there. Awesome. And Instagram, of course.
Dan, thank you so much for coming on.
Yep. Yeah, it was fun. It was great. I didn't realize I had done so much stuff.
You did a lot, and there's more to go too. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, stuff started popping in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, that. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I hope everybody enjoys hearing it.
Take care.
All right. See you later.